Tevan Sarnai. Good afternoon, everyone. Venerable Sirs and dear Dhamma friends, trustees of Avanya Gimanhala Charitable Trust warmly welcome you to an evening along the Noble Path. We planned this dialogue with Kalyana Mittas or spiritual friends on the occasion of the visit to Sri Lanka of Venerable Bhikkhu Nissarano from Australia. He is not a stranger to many of us who have gathered here today. This Dhamma talk is to offer him wishes on his 70th birthday, which was on 8th December last year, 2022. It was poor day in Australia. Hence, the postponement of this program, which was earlier planned and scheduled to be on that day. The Zoom session it was to be. Venerable Sir, our best wishes for good health for many more years along the noble path, and also wish that you would progress further along the noble path to attain as many goals as possible in this life itself. Venerable Bhikkhu Nissarano will introduce himself at the commencement of his sermon. But to briefly mention, he left Sri Lanka late 2019, hoping to return to Sri Lanka early 2020. COVID epidemic lockdowns kept postponing his return to Sri Lanka, and in the meantime, he has been offered to be in charge of the newly created monastery in NEWBURY. Therefore, he would be returning to his homeland, Australia, very soon, in early March 2023. I would be failing in my duty if I do not introduce Venerable Bhikkhu Metta Vihari from Denmark. But much more than a Sri Lankan now, he is the most important VIP in our charitable trust. Venerable Bhikkhu Metta Vihari represents the Venerable Mahasangha in an advisory capacity on the Board of Trustees of Avanya Gimanhala Charitable Trust. I offer him all merit for his guidance all the way. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. He was instrumental in paving the way for commencement of and the continuance of operations of this Avanya Bhikkhu Gimanhala, or the transit abode for Venerable Mahasangha. I indicated to him of my decision to offer this apartment property to the charitable trust. In fact, ever since my 50th birthday in the year 2000, he had been striving extremely hard to convince me to give up my lay life and enter monastic life. We are very fortunate today to have with us yet another guest of honor, Venerable Bhikkhu Abhayarathana from Canada, who will speak a few words before the commencement of today's Dhamma talk by Venerable Ajahn Nissarano. Venerable Bhikkhu Abhayarathana will remember his experiences just before the commencement of operations of this Bhikkhu Gimanhala, as well as the very first alms round on Pindapata, Charika, as the very first occupant at this Bhikkhu Gimanhala in Batamulla around August 2016. Over to you, Venerable Sir, Venerable Bhikkhu Abhayarathana.
Hello, my name is Abhayarathana. I'm a Canadian monk and I've been resident in Sri Lanka on and off over the past 10 years. I've been absent for a year or two here and there. And when I lived here in 2015, people talked about establishing this place, Kumar and his family. And finally, it seemed like it was going to come to fruition. And when we visited here, and small groups of monks came and visited and checked it out and make sure that it was going to be okay. I came with Bhante, Metavahari, from the Narada Center, and there was discussion about how the monks were going to be fed when Bhante Metavahari blurted out, "We'll go alms round." And then somebody said, "But you'll go hungry. You won't get any food." And he said, "Then we'll go hungry." And he said, "I don't think we're going to go hungry at all." So, as a result of that, though, over a period of months, and it all came together, and we ended up starting this place. And by coincidence, I ended up becoming the first person, the first monk to actually live here. And I came in the afternoon one day and settled in and knew that the next morning I would have to go alms round. So the next morning, as was our tradition, I delayed leaving. Usually we would leave and start Ajahn in the villages, for example, in the forest monasteries at dawn, and then just go through the village. But we delayed it here because it's an urban setting. I put on my robe and took my bowl and in the sling. I was apprehensive whether or not, being the first monk in some time to actually go Ajahn in this area. Subsequently, we learned it had been decades, really, since monks had gone Ajahn around here. And so I walked down the stairs, convinced, I could get food, or I might not get anything today. And I walked down the stairs rather than go down in the elevator. People were only on the second floor. And I came around the corner in the car park down on the ground floor. And there were 4 or 5 people already standing at the front gate. And so I walked to the gate because they're not encouraged to come in here and actually deliver it to the Gillenhall right here to the apartment. So we prefer to go out into the village. And so I walked out the front gate and people started putting food in my bowl. And from that day on, pretty much we've established if there's one monk here, then you can go to some close houses. If you're only here for a day or two, they're usually quite generous. Or we go back to towards the main road, towards a part of the housing around here. It's part of one of the original villages. It's probably been there for many decades now. And always, it's very traditional Ajahn because you don't need to set anything up. You just walk around in this big horseshoe. It goes down and around and comes back. And you'll always get fed. I've never known anybody to actually go hungry in this country, but it's always a surprise. And it gives them a great deal of joy in the village as well when they see a monk, especially a foreign monk, and somebody as old as I am going Ajahn and staying at this place. And they seem to be quite appreciative. There was one occasion when I came here in the last year, when I can't exactly remember, but I left and went on Ajahn. And I came back and I actually had nothing in my bowl. And so I just thought, wow, that's a first. Now, I was a bit concerned, and I thought, well, it happens sometimes. And I came around the corner down the laneway there, coming up here, and once again, there were 3 or 4 people standing at the gate because they had sort of missed me, going through the village. And, well, sure enough, that day, I didn't go hungry that day either. So pretty much ever since, we've depended on Ajahn in the pot. And it really helps because it takes up a good part of the day and provides an opportunity for them, the lay people, to actually give. There's an old expression in Burma that says, we're not only going on Ajahn to get food for ourselves, but we're going to provide the opportunity for people to give, so that even if they give us a spoonful of rice, 30, 40 people give me a spoonful of rice, or a spoonful of something, beans or dal or something, it all adds up to a nutrition for a day. And it's been that way ever since we started here, and it seems to continue, and it's been quite helpful. And we've never gone hungry, and it's been helpful for everybody. So there you have it.
Now, let's listen to Venerable Bhikkhu Nissarano. I request you to kindly switch off all your mobile phones, especially as this program is being recorded to be subsequently transferred to YouTube channel of Aranya Gimanhala Charitable Trust. Over to you, Venerable Sir. Microphone to Venerable Bhikkhu Nissarano.
You should have this cup. So, thank you very much, Kuma Bhante, for inviting me to give a desana. And as I mentioned, we'll have the 5 precepts. But first of all, just a bit of an introduction to because some people may be thinking, who is he? And I sometimes think that too, don't worry. And as Kumar Bhante mentioned, I am Venerable Nissarano. In Australia I'm called Ajahn Nissarano, but I ordained in 1998, so I've been a bhikkhu, have had 25 vasa, so getting on a bit now. And I ordained with Ajahn Brahm, or Ajahn Brahmavamsa Mahatero, in Australia, in Western Australia, and stayed at his monastery for 9.5 years before coming going to Thailand and then coming here to Sri Lanka in 2006 for, I thought, 3 months or so for the vasa. But once I came here, my mind changed, and I thought, yes, I must stay. And I did stay for 13.5 years and lived for the 8 of those years in a cave, we say Purana Galvena, not far from Balangoda. And that was a wonderful experience, going on alms round to the village below and just living very simply in the forest. It was very, very nice. I'm now too old for it. So that's it. But after that, of course, I returned to Australia, as Kumar Bhante mentioned, and then, of course, got caught up with COVID, like all of us, and then was invited to be the senior monk at NEWBURY Buddhist Monastery. We have nuns there. There's a senior nun. And we're going to have a meditation retreat centre is on its way. So that gives you a bit of a roundup of my life and gives you an idea. So we can begin the program with having the 5 precepts in English. I always feel this is good. We know what we're getting into. We know the meaning too. That's the most important bit. So I will... if you would like to request, and I can give you the wording, Venerable Sir, we request the 3 refuges and 5 precepts, and you can just do that for the 2nd time, for the 3rd time, if you say that. So it's Venerable Sir, we request the 3 refuges and 5 precepts.
We request the 3 refuges and 5 precepts.
For the 2nd time, Venerable Sir, we request the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. For the 3rd time, Venerable Sir, we request the 3 refuges and 5 precepts. And the idea of that is to show that it's voluntary and it's for us to keep. It's not something that is being forced upon us. So, and now we can do the... So that's good. Now we can do the homage to the Buddha, and I'll do it 3 times. You'll get the idea pretty quickly, I think, and in English, so it's interesting. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Over to you. Can you do it? It's like homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Yeah. To the blessed, homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Got it? That's good. Now we'll do the refuges. They're much easier. So, to the Buddha I go for refuge. To the Dhamma I go for refuge. To the Sangha I go for refuge. For the 2nd time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the 2nd time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the 2nd time to the Sangha I go for refuge. For the 3rd time to the Buddha I go for refuge. For the third time to the Dhamma I go for refuge. For the third time to the Sangha I go for refuge. This completes the going for refuge. Good. And now we do the precepts in English. And I'll do one line, and then if you can remember it, to repeat it. I'll give you a help too. I undertake the precept to refrain from destroying living creatures. From destroying living creatures. Yeah. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. To refrain from taking what is not given. Yeah, very good. Because you don't see the text actually. It's very quite new. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from false speech.
I undertake the precept to refrain from false speech.
I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicating liquors and drugs which lead to carelessness. I undertake
to refrain from taking
intoxicating liquors and drugs, which lead to carelessness. There we are. And so sadhu. Yeah, there we are. And I can actually do, in the Thai tradition, they have this little verse in Pali, and I can do it in English too, which is quite nice because it's got a meaning. Yes. That's very cool.
First you can do in Pali and then...
Yeah, good. Imani Pamchasika Padani Silena Sugatinyanti Silena Boga Sampada Silena Nibutinyanti Tasma Silam Visedaye. These 5 precepts have morality as a vehicle for happiness. Have morality as a vehicle for good fortune. Have morality as a vehicle for liberation. Let morality therefore be purified. Sadhu. Well done. So that's very good. So that completes the 3 refuges and 5 precepts in English. So it's a bit unusual, but it's very important that we have it in the language that we understand. So in similar would be better, really, because then it's most people will really understand that much easier. So that's very good. And so the talk today is really, it was requested that I speak about the third noble truth. And of course the third noble truth is cessation of suffering. And of course the cessation of suffering is good news for all of us. Because of course the first noble truth, if the Buddha had taught the first noble truth only about dukkha, described it, well, we were all pretty familiar with it actually, though some people say, oh no, I'm not suffering. No. Do you get sick? Oh yes. You're getting older? Yes. Well, they say, oh no, I'm not suffering. Do you get depressed, angry? Oh yes, but I'm still not suffering. So the Buddha taught the first noble truth, and if he only taught that, it would be depressing. Often they say Buddhism is very negative because it's talking about suffering. And if he'd only taught the second noble truth, the origin of suffering, which of course is craving, that too wouldn't be enough. But the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, the ending of suffering, this is the good news. Like an illness that we have if we're sick, and then the illness finishes. It's great happiness. The end of suffering, the end of dukkha, is always going to be happiness. And we know that when we've had a really serious sickness, we've had cancer, and we've recovered from it, and we're free of that sickness. So we appreciate it for a time. Then we forget, don't we? We get used to having our health back. So this will be a talk about the third noble truth. And often I've been focusing on the Four Noble Truths since the Rains retreat, actually since the Vasana last year, and going into the Four Noble Truths and been teaching one after the other. So this is the third Noble Truth. And I called the subtitle this one, "You Don't Own Me, You Don't Own Me." And I'll explain that later. Because this is the, we often feel we own craving. Craving is us. And this is something that I'll focus on in the talk. So the third Noble Truth, I think everyone here knows it pretty well. And Kumar Mathur sent me the Pali. You sent me the Pali, and I have the Pali too. And I just quote the Pali because then it's, it's everybody's clear. I'm sure you know it very well. And it goes like this: Idam ko pana bhikkhave dukkha nirodham ariya satcham yotassa eva tanhaya asesa viraga nirodho chago patinisago bhuti anhaliyo. And of course that translates in English as, now, this is the noble truth of the cessation of suffering. It is the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over, giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not adhering to it, not sticking to it. So I think everybody knows that, that probably here, many people will know that very well. So. And in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first teaching of the Lord Buddha, this is where it appears. And he says that our job as practitioners, as followers of the Lord Buddha, is to realize the cessation of suffering. This is our job. He, in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, he said he has realized it. He has finished the work. But our job as practitioners is to realize it. And this will be great happiness for us. And so I was just going to ask people, what is this very same craving that the Lord Buddha is talking about? Does anybody remember? It's from the second Noble Truth, of course. And he's talking about the three types of craving. So it's just good to mention that it's the craving for experience through our five senses. And this is virtually our whole world. And thinking about it, reacting to it, having views and opinions about it, and so on. And this is very much our life. We don't know another world. It's only meditators that experience deep meditation that go to, as it were, another world, the world of the mind. And of course the second one is the craving to continue to exist, just to be someone. This is a very important thing. And I remember Ajahn Nissarano saying when he was in America years ago, this is an English monk in Thailand, he was in America, and he said he heard this woman say to somebody, even though you're poor, you can be someone, you can become someone. It's so important for everybody to become someone, and make your mark in some way, be very wealthy, be famous. And now, of course, the main focus for many people's lives is become celebrities. Terrible, isn't it? Or influencers, on the internet. This is the big thing to be. It validates your existence. You are somebody, you're a presence. And of course, the third type, of course, that's continued existence. We want to go on and on and on. We feel like, most people live their lives as if it's forever. And so it's, of course, once we get old, we're quite happy to finish with this life, usually because the body is not working well. And the last one is the craving to end existence. And this is one that's very coming from a mind of aversions, coming from negativity, and often, you can see it in case of people who commit suicide. They want to end this. They're suffering. They want to finish with it. And they think by killing the body, that will finish the job, that after that there'll be nothing. But of course, the Lord Buddha said, it's a condition for rebirth. Because there is defilement there, and there's the mind wanting to go into the future. There's a lot of wanting, because this is craving, isn't it? This craving will take us into the future. Because craving's not fulfilled here and now, it's usually in the future. Even if you just want a cup of tea, it will be in a minute or a few minutes or whatever. So, and you can ask yourself, many people would say, well, what is the big deal with craving? Why does the Lord Buddha focus on craving? Why is it the origin of suffering? I think that's a very good question, actually. And of course, it's the origin of suffering because it leads to rebirth. We are stuck on repeat, again and again and again, over and over and over again. Of course, Lord Buddha, before his enlightenment, on the night of his enlightenment, he saw millions of rebirths. And therefore, this repetition of being born, getting older, being a baby. I saw babies on the plane when I came here. I thought, wow, what a life. There's dukkha there for sure. And then growing up, going through school, then through education, then finding a partner, finding a job, getting sick from time to time, getting older, and then getting close to death. And repeating that again and again and again. Of course, when he saw that, it was enough for him, and it would be enough for us to think, wow, this is not good. We think, actually, more likely we'd think, this is what I usually say, Ati, enough, enough, too much, Wati, too much. And so rebirth is what the Lord Buddha, why the craving is so important, because it's taking us into a new rebirth. And I really love the simile that the Buddha gave for this explanation for it. You can understand why craving is something that is so central to address, to remove. And because this simile is of the seed in the field and moisture or water. We need a seed in a field, in the earth, in a pasture or rice, whatever it be, needs moisture. And this is a simile for the seed, the Lord Buddha says, is consciousness. The consciousness that will pass on to another life, changing all the time. And the seed is the karma, our past actions of body, speech and mind. They take us to where we're going to take rebirth. And what's the moisture? Craving. We want to be there. That's basically driving rebirth. And of course, if we have the good karma, we can, if we created enough good karma, we can be reborn in the conditions that we are attached to, usually to people, places, possessions, all those things. We'll try to come back to a very similar life. So this is it shows why craving is so central to rebirth. For many people, if they think, well, I don't believe in rebirth, it all finishes, then the Lord Buddha's teaching does not apply, they think. They think it doesn't apply. But when an enlightened mind sees this from experience, not from theory, sees it from direct experience, as Buddhists we can trust that and take on trust, even though we may not have memories of a past life, take that on trust and then investigate it. I know some Buddhists, Sri Lankan Buddhists too, in Australia, they say to me, I don't believe in rebirth. And I think, wow, I'm quite amazed, because I think, well, do you believe the Buddha was enlightened? I find that really hard, because an enlightened mind is something so rare in the world. Someone that really sees things as they are and sees a way out. This is the beauty of the Buddha's teaching. All the religious traditions have really, other religious traditions have given teachings about how we can continue existence. That's all they've done, really. They haven't shown a way out of existence. They think if a permanent heaven, that's the way out. But of course the Lord Buddha saw that all these different states of existence are not permanent. Everything in samsara is impermanent, never perfect, and it's a process, it's not a personal thing, it's not self. So this is something that people, of course, other religions cannot grasp, especially non-self. So, and of course, when we talk about the realization of cessation of suffering, what does that mean? Why? And of course, the cessation of suffering is really enlightenment, isn't it? But often they say, really, it's the realizing of Nibbana in this life, becoming fully awakened, becoming an arahant. And of course, there are two types of arahants, and I'm sure you know that. You know the ones that are still with us, or still alive, and when they pass away, then they will not be reborn ever again, finished with rebirth, never coming to existence. And this is called sa-upadi sesa nibbana, the first one. Parinibbana, of course, is the second type of arahant, someone that passes away, the body passes away, the mind passes away. The first one, the body and mind still there in this life, but then at death, finished, gone. So this is the escape from samsara. And I like that word because my name, Nissarano, means escape. And of course, when we do the ordinations, the first words in the ordinations, isn't it? Sambaduka, Nissarana, Nibbana, Sachikarana, Taya. And what that means is to escape from all suffering and to realize Nibbana. So this is the aim, that we're encouraged at ordination to aim for, to keep that in mind. This is the purpose for ordaining. Not for gain, honour or fame, all that. It is to overcome or escape from all suffering and to realise Nibbana. So many people say, well, what is Nibbana? And it's a big question, because people, Ajahn Brahm often mentions, most people, you ask them what is Nibbana, and they say, well, don't know really, but the Buddha gives quite I think a very good answer to the Brahman Janasoni when he asked, how is Nibbana directly visible? When you say directly visible, Sanditiko, it means to be experienced in this life, not after this life, not once one's passed away, in this life. And so he said to the Brahman Janasoni, he said that one experiences, this is the definition of Nibbana in this life, one experiences the destruction, he says, one experiences the destruction of lust or desire, with nothing left over, and the destruction of hatred with nothing left over, and the destruction of delusion with nothing left over. And then he said, it is in this way too, probably he said Brahman then, that Nibbana is directly visible here and now, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, and to be personally experienced by the wise. So this is, isn't it? This is the qualities of the Dhamma. This is the qualities of the Dhamma. It's to be realised here and now. You don't have to wait till you die to find out if it's true or not. It can be done here and now. So that's Nibbana. And of course, the reason, I think it's a very important thing to mention that, of course, the cessation of suffering is dukkha nirodha, isn't it? Dukkha nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Why does the Lord Buddha use cessation? Why doesn't he use something more active, like getting rid of, or something like that? And of course, cessation is a natural process. That's the distinction, really. It's a natural ceasing that happens when the causes and conditions cease, when the fuel for existence ceases, when the fire of existence goes out, then it ceases naturally. And because all the fuel, all the conditions that support it continued existence, gone, and especially craving, because that's the big one that will project us. But not only craving, that's fine. It's also, when we use the idea of cessation, it emphasises this is not coming from a me. What I'm not doing this. I'm not making it happen. This is a very important thing in our practice. So often we feel like I'm doing it. I've got to make it happen. And this state of mind is really not going to be very helpful for the practice, because our body and minds are a process, aren't they? And we're working with that process, creating the causes and conditions for the process to go in a particular direction towards realizing Nibbana. So this is an important part. We're not using willpower, we're using wisdom power. And this is the way of the Buddha's teaching, to understand the nature of existence, to understand the nature of craving, so that it can cease. And of course the cessation that the Lord Buddha is talking about is dependent cessation. Once we have understood the Four Noble Truths, understood the nature of reality, understood anicca or anicca, impermanence, dukkha, and anatta or anatma, then that's a natural consequence. The whole of the links of dependent origination start to cease. The sankharas start to cease. And the sankharas are an interesting one, because these are our intentional activities by body, speech and mind. But what's one of the big intentional activities? Craving is a big one. Wanting is a big one. Another word for it is choosing, being a doer. These are all aspects of sankharas. But once that finishes, then that person, their consciousness will not take rebirth, because of finishing, having understood, and not creating the karma for a new life to happen, not having the craving for a new life to be perpetuated. So this is the nature of cessation. And of course the Lord Buddha gives that whole chain, which I'll read anyway, maybe it's interesting. When ignorance fades away and ceases, with nothing left over, choices cease. This is sankhara. This is, I call them intentional activities. They cease. When choices cease, consciousness ceases. When consciousness ceases, name and form, nama rupa, ceases. When nama rupa, name and form ceases, the six sense bases cease. When the six sense bases cease, contact ceases. When contact ceases, feeling ceases. When feeling ceases, craving's gone. When craving ceases, then grasping or upadana, that ceases. When grasping ceases, continued existence finishes. And when continued existence finishes, then rebirth ceases. And when rebirth ceases, old age and death, sorrow and lamentation, pain, sadness and distress cease. This is how the entire mass of suffering ceases. Good news. Very good news. It's interesting, because in our lives we so often relate to each other as persons. We think that person's a good person, or this person's giving me a hard time. But in reality, the Lord Buddha is pointing to this body and mind is a process, and it's a process that can cease given the right understanding, the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. So, and of course we can ask too, well, what is the insight that leads to the breakthrough to stream entry, to the Dhamma, seeing the Dhamma? And I think, does everybody know? What is the breakthrough to the Dhamma? And of course it's not very much of a mystery. Seeing impermanence really deeply, not just, things change, I'm getting a bit older, that sort of thing. It's really seeing deeply into the nature of impermanence, that it's that everything can eventually cease. And of course it reminds one of the episode when Venerable Asaji was in Rajagaha, and he met the Upatissa, Venerable Sariputta to be, on alms round. And Venerable Sariputta was so struck by the quality of Venerable Asaji's presence, the calmness, the gracefulness that when he went on alms round. He was really struck by it. And he didn't interrupt the alms round. He followed him to the end. And then he asked him, "Who is your teacher? And what does he teach?" And of course, Venerable Sariputta was so humble. Venerable Asaji was so humble. He says, "I'm only new to this teaching, to this dispensation." He's an arahant. So that's pretty good. He's qualified, really. And so then he said to him, and this is the English translation of what he said, but it was so powerful that it made the Venerable Sariputta to be, hadn't yet ordained, a Sotapanna, or a head which arrived at Sotapatti. And it is, whatever things arise from a cause, of them the Tathagata, the Buddha, has told the cause, and of the cessation of them. Such is the teaching proclaimed by the great monk. Wow, that was enough, isn't it? That's there we go. There's lights come on. Light of Dhamma. So there we are. So arising. So that was enough for him to become enlightened. And we've heard it. I've read it many times, but I don't think it has. I don't think many people just get enlightened from hearing. Just being in the presence of Venerable Asaji and hearing it directly from an arahant. Because in the end, isn't it, the two conditions that we need for in seeing the Dhamma are the words of another, not just anybody, not the local shopkeeper or whoever, or even myself, but an Aryan, someone who's seen the Dhamma themselves, who embodies the qualities of the Dhamma. And the second factor is, of course, that one really reflects wisely on what they're hearing, that it go deeply to the source, and this is called Yoniso Manasikara, very famously. Wise attention, they often translate it as, so very important. And of course, when he says, and then what Asaji said, arising from the cause, is pointing to the fact that, and this is important, I was contemplating this recently, that things are not just happening by chance, they're all driven by cause and effect. Oftentimes people think, well, things are just happening randomly, in their lives or around them, and certainly conditions can be out of control, but they are arising due to causes and effects, some of which we don't know about, a lot of which we don't know about. This life is not a chance experience, actually, and the states of mind we develop are not accidental. So conditionality is a very important part, and because things, once something has arisen, it must end, it must come to an end. If it's made up of different causes and conditions, those causes and conditions, when they cease, when they deteriorate, when they decay, then it will finish. They must break down. And this is, of course, the nature of all sankharas, in the sense of all these conditions, compounded things in our life. And everything in the world is like that. And he told the cause. This is the Buddha. He told the cause. What's the cause? And of course, that's second noble truth, isn't it? it's dukkha, and it's craving is the main one. But it's also conditionality, that this is a process. We don't live life like that. It's very interesting. I've been talking to a monk in Australia, and he really interprets it, this process, aspect of the process, not person, very, very deeply. And it changes the way you see life. Instead of thinking this person is totally awful and dreadful, We see that they're the way they are at this moment because of causes and conditions, but they won't be that way all the time. And so this is actually a way that we can not cling to grudges, not cling to negative mind states like, oh, he's a dreadful person, I don't ever want to see him again, or I'll definitely, give him, speak harshly to him. So this is the cause and the cessation of them is exactly the third noble truth, isn't it? That it shows the impermanence of these causes and conditions. Why impermanence is so important, anicca, as a breakthrough, is because this craving is impermanent too. We see it in our lives. But they come and go very rapidly, don't we? We get one craving after another. We want this, we want that, we don't want this, we don't want that. So we can see that they are in themselves impermanent. But that can help us, because when we see the impermanence of what we want, what we crave for, it actually enables us to let go. This is the importance of the three characteristics. They enable us to let go of craving. When we think of something we really want in our lives, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's some electronic device that's common these days, a new phone or whatever. If we actually see that person or that thing as being very impermanent, if we think of it in, say, 5 years' time, if it was a phone, it'll be an old model. It will be. It won't be in the condition that we are craving at the moment. And if we keep that impermanence in mind, very helpful too with sexual desire too, isn't it? If we think of the other person, maybe 40 or 50 years plus, and then we think, oh, well, I'm not so attractive anymore, because of course it's youth and appearance that is driven. It drives sexuality, it's lust. But and so when Venerable Sariputta heard this, of course, immediately entered the stream of Dhamma, saw the Dhamma, and they say the dustless, stainless eye of the Dhamma arose. Here we go. Yam kinchi samudaya dhammam sambhantam nirodha dhammanti. So whatever is of the nature to arise, samudaya, all that is of the nature to cease. Doesn't sound like much, does it? And I think it's very, and this is exactly the experience, of course, that Venerable Anya Kandanya had in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the first teaching. He was the one that got it, wasn't he? He was the first, and he really understood. This is what he realised. But when we read that, when we hear that, we can't imagine that that's enough. And of course, I think with cessation, there is more to the picture as well, because we realise we can think, how does this insight into impermanence lead to the complete and utter cessation of suffering, of craving, of suffering? How does it do that with nothing left over? Is it enough to see impermanence? But of course, when a person sees impermanence, they will also get the other characteristics coming with it, and that's important, because they enable that person to let go completely. And of course, impermanence is the one that starts the process, as I mentioned. And when we see that things are dependently arisen, they've come into existence, they've happened because of causes and conditions, not because of a me or somebody else or God, somebody like that. And it's just a process that is happening so that it can cease and it is not permanent. Seeing impermanence is so important because it actually impacts on seeing that we are impermanent too, that there is not a possibility of getting permanent happiness, a state that's really frozen in, as it were, in terms of happiness. We're just happy all the time. That's not possible. Things are perfect. So it's a direct understanding that craving is impermanent. It's dukkha. We've seen also from the First Noble Truth that not getting what we want that's craving, is dukkha. So it's dukkha in itself already. But this is actually a very important thing, because so often each and every one of us may think that, and often people do think like this actually, craving is their best friend. If they don't crave, they won't get what they want. Then they won't be happy. But they don't reflect that once I crave, I'm really a bit discontent already. Actually, I won't be happy until I get what I want. So I think people often don't see it like that. And of course, it's the also direct understanding of non-self that enables us to let go, to see that there can't be a permanent me here inside. There's a process of body and mind, and always has been. Sometimes people, when they hear about anatta, they think, well, I feel like there's someone here, thank you very much. And of course there's a personality and a character, isn't there? We all have these personalities and characters, but it's not a permanent feature. We're not always the same, and most of us know people that have either their character has really improved and developed, and they've become very kind, generous people, and people who have gone reverse. They've got into drinking or drugs and really gone downhill and doing all sorts of unskillful activities. So it's not a permanent thing, but there is something here. And of course what it's pointing to, a non-self, anatta, is when we say the mind is non-self, it means craving has to be non-self. It's actually a process in the mind that's arisen due to causes and conditions. People don't think of it that way, because this is why craving is so important too, because we identify as the craver, as the chooser, as the person who's wanting very strongly. I can see it in my own life. And this is also why craving is such an important linchpin, important thing that connects us to it life after life after life, because it's connected with self and who we think we are. But in actual fact, it's just a strong mind state that is passing through the mind due to causes and conditions. Like, you can see it in everyday life, can't we? We see an advertisement, it may be in the street, in the papers, or on the internet. Feeling arises. Pleasant. Wouldn't mind that. The new phone or the new whatever. And then from that, I must get it, I must have it. And then clinging to that, grasping that as sort of a happiness, sticking to it. And this is the way it's arising. Oftentimes when you hear of craving arising and ceasing, it's very, very simple. It's our experience of the five senses. This is where it arises. And the Lord Buddha says later, I'll give a quote, this is where it can cease too. So this is the important thing to realize. This craving and the cessation of craving is nothing. It's not so far from our experience. In fact, we can directly experience it with the right understanding, with a peaceful mind, still mind, powerful mind, a mind free of the defilements, kilesa, the negative aspects of the mind. We can see this for ourselves directly. We don't have to believe. We can actually experience it ourselves. So this is very important. And just to emphasize that point too, when we contemplate the words that the Lord Buddha describes the Third Noble Truth in, he says, it is the fading away and cessation of that very same craving from the Second Noble Truth, with nothing left over. But this is the important thing. He says it's the giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not adhering to it. And I don't know when you hear that. When I read that, it really struck me recently. Doesn't it sound like something we own, a possession? We are, giving craving away. We're letting it go. We're releasing craving. We're not sticking to it or adhering to craving. It sounds like something we think we own. And when we think we own something, that changes everything, doesn't it? If it's somebody else's property, if somebody else has an accident in their car, we think, well, poor thing, But if it's our car, it's quite different. It's very different. So if we have this idea, this craving is me, it's mine, I own this, it's going to make it very difficult to let it, as it says here, to give it away, chago, and then this is same as generosity, when we're giving in a positive sense, so we're giving it away. Ajahn Nissarano is letting craving go, and releasing it. Muti is releasing it, freeing it from this bond of me and mine. This is my craving, and not sticking to this craving. Craving in itself is very sticky. That's the thing that we can all experience in life. Once a craving arises, wow, it's hard to let go of, and it sticks. So it's very important that we can if we take on board this idea that craving is not me, it's not mine, it's not myself. This gives us the space to actually let go of it. Just in the same way, as I mentioned before, if we heard a neighbour talking next door, we wouldn't take that very seriously. And so if we can view this craving as not a part of me, not mine, not itself, then it's possible to let go big time, with nothing left over. And it reminds me very much of Ajahn Chah had a lovely saying about the body being not self, and he said this, he said, if the body could talk, it would be telling us all day long, you're not my owner, Actually, it's telling us all the time, he said, but it's Dhamma language. So we are unable to understand it. So the body is telling us that. And people, when they hear that, they think, oh yeah. But as you get older, you realise this body is not ours, actually. We can't control it. That's certainly one of the things that the Lord Buddha says. If something is not in our control, it cannot be itself. If we can't control it, we can't say to the body, don't get sick, don't die, and don't get old. If we can't do that. So not only are we not the owner of the body, of course, we're not the owner of the mind, but like tenants who are renting a house, leasing a property, we're responsible. It's not that we think we, can just let the mind go wild, let the house deteriorate or the property deteriorate, even though it's not ours. No, we have a responsibility to look after it as best we can. And some tenants do a very good job, and some tenants don't. But a tenant who does a good job is, of course, a practitioner who is practicing generosity, who's practicing sila, morality, and who's practicing developing the mind, cultivating the mind. So this is meditation and developing wisdom. It's all those things. So this is really looking after the rented accommodation each and every one of us lives in. And of course it will be taken back by nature eventually, won't it? These bodies are it's not possible to last forever. And as they get older, they become more problematic. And I was saying to the monk who's here, Abhayarathana, that we are heavily into maintenance as we get older. And I think most older people would agree, heavily into maintenance. So that's so this is an important aspect of it that allows us to let go. And I'd just like to get close to finishing off and make a few points from some comments from the suttas, from quotations from the suttas, where the Buddha, and I'll just emphasise it really, that it's where he says, wherever in the world there is anything agreeable and pleasurable, there the cessation of wanting, of craving comes about. And what is there in the world that is agreeable and pleasurable? Sights, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and knowing. And he says here, continues, this is where it comes to be abandoned, where we're experiencing it. So this is in our lives, really. But it has to be with a mind that's ready, that has a great deal of stillness power, and can see things clearly, and also has the Buddha's teachings, and is practicing Dhamma Vipassana, reflecting on the Dhamma in their lives. And this is when wanting can be abandoned, and there is cessation comes about. That's what the Lord Buddha says. And it's the same point is being made by Ajahn Nissarano, a lovely quote where he says, peace is within oneself, to be found in the same place as agitation and suffering. It's not to be found in the forest or on a hilltop, nor is it given by a teacher. Where you experience suffering, you can also find freedom from suffering. Trying to run away from suffering is actually running towards it. That's what we're doing, most people, isn't it? We want to run away from suffering. We want to avoid unpleasant feeling, dukkha vedana, painful feeling at all costs. So this is, he says, actually running towards it. And just to emphasise the last point too, to make it really clearly, there's a lovely sutta called Self-Examination in the Samyutta Nikaya, here called Linked Discourses or Connected Discourses. And this one is called Self-Examination. And the Lord Buddha is talking about self-examination of our experience, not from the books. We have good to read the books, yes, but to look at what's happening in our body and mind. This is where direct experience, direct understanding can arise. Nowhere else, not from the book. It's got to be from us, looking at our experience. And he mentions that Brahmins and ascetics that in the past who saw the things that seemed nice and pleasant in the world, and this is all the sight, sound, smells, tastes and touches in the world, as impermanent, suffering, as non-self, as diseased and dangerous, they gave up craving. They gave up craving. Giving up craving, they gave up attachment. Giving up attachment, they gave up suffering. Giving up suffering, they were freed from rebirth, old age, death, and from sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. They were freed from suffering, I say. And he says that were Brahmins and ascetics in the past, same in the future, and same at the present. So this is really good news. This shows us how it can happen. This is how the third noble truth, the cessation of suffering, comes about from the trigger of seeing deeply the impermanence of everything, seeing everything. We a lot of times we'll hang on to something, think, well, that's not impermanent, whatever it be, and hold on to that as something that will be there forever. And of course the Lord Buddha said no, but not only that, understanding dukkha, suffering itself, and also understanding non-self. This will allow the full, complete letting go, with nothing left over of dukkha, of craving, and of suffering. So, dear Dhamma friends, let's develop the Noble Eightfold Path. That is the path for realising the cessation of suffering, the very practical way of doing it, and put these things into practice, particularly right view. And right view is really important, isn't it? It's driving the whole path. If the view isn't right, everything else is wrong, unfortunately. So it's very important. And to aim for developing right mindfulness, being present, really understanding what we're experiencing here and now. So we have the data for direct experience. And then right stillness, when the mind becomes so powerful, so pure of all those negativities, that it can see clearly. Our spectacles have been cleaned and we can really see. In order to develop right, this is the interesting thing, the Lord Buddha never taught the tenfold path, did he? But there are two more factors after the Noble Eightfold Path. And the ninth factor is right knowledge. This is the experience of anicca, anitya, dukkha, and anatta. And the experience of impermanence, direct experience of impermanence, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, or imperfection, you could say, and non-self, that is not personal. And so this is samajnana, and then as a result of that samajnana, samavimukti, and this is right liberation from rebirth, right liberation from all the defilements in the mind. So this is the direction that the Noble Eightfold Path takes us. That's the practice path, isn't it? This is the results, the samajnana and the samavimukti. So I encourage each and everyone, myself included, to practice that and to reach the end, the cessation of suffering, and completely with nothing left over. So that's really something. So thank you for listening. And I don't know if that's enough for today, or would you like questions? Are there any questions from the floor?
What should we do to become stream enterers?
Yes, it's our job really, isn't it? Well, as I mentioned, those two factors are really, really important, aren't they? To have that contact with someone that has seen the Dhamma. The hard thing is to know who has seen the Dhamma. Sometimes you can tell who hasn't. That's probably an easier job. But who has seen the Dhamma, that's more difficult. And then to develop that investigation, inward self-examination, looking at our experience, are important factors. But you can see, if we're developing the qualities of a stream enterer, they're usually not mentioned as causing factors, but the more faith we have in Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, the more our sila is good, then we reduce some of the factors that prevent us from becoming stream enterers. And if we develop more learning and more listening to the teachings, reading the teachings, especially the teachings of the Buddha directly, not from another, then that isn't a condition that can help support stream entry and coming on the path to stream entry. So that's.
Do they know that they have become stream enterers? Who does not know?
Good question. Do people know they've become a stream enterer? I know the Lord Buddha, Ajahn Brahma often mentions, the Lord Buddha says that there are a number of things that you will always remember. Where you became a stream enterer is one of them. Where you became an arahant, I think is the last one, and where you ordained, where you became a samanera, I think is the first. So it's not something that could accidentally happen. It will change one's life so much for the better. And there's a lovely saying that Lord Buddha says in the Samyutta Nikaya. He says, even though we're talking about suffering, he says that this seeing the Four Noble Truth is not accompanied by suffering and distress and despair. He says, on the contrary, it is entirely joy and happiness is the result of actually seeing the Four Noble Truths, really understanding the nature of reality. What a great relief. So that's a very good question, actually. Yeah. So yes. So this is the breakthrough to seeing Four Noble Truths and the conditions that support it. So, any other comments or questions?
The questions I emailed.
Yeah, I've got them here. Do you want them?
Okay. Yeah, they wanted.
Yeah. All right.
No other questions.
Is it too late? Is it time to finish off, or I can answer those questions quickly, maybe?
Yeah.
There's 4 questions, so I just mention them. Have you got time? People got time?
Still,
yeah.
If they go, we can continue.
I'll just do them briefly then. Going forward with Anapanasati Bhavana meditation. After attaining the jhanas, at what stage and method, when and how, do we switch over to Vidarshana meditation? Just briefly, of course, this is the Anapanasati Sutta, is the mindfulness of breathing. It's 16 steps in 4 sections. And the third section of 4, of course, is where one experience is the freeing of the mind, the liberation of the mind. This is not enlightenment, but it's the jhanas. And then having come out of that, then one can contemplate. And then one will immediately contemplate. It's if you had just the most extraordinary experience in your life, what would be the first question? What was that? And why? And what was different about it? What was? Ajahn Brahm usually says, "What's missing? What wasn't there in that experience?" It was a fantastic experience, but you know, to really understand it, it's going to be very natural that it will come up. And of course, what the mind turns to is a sort of course seeing, first of all, impermanence. Impermanence. What that means in this case is what wasn't there in that experience. What wasn't there? The five senses. What wasn't there? The defilements. What wasn't there? This really strong sense of self. Seeing those things when one comes out, if a person comes out of jhana, they can have a really strong effect. They've seen the impermanence of craving too. Because in jhana, there's no craving. If we have craving, this is the real catch. What do you say? Catch 22. They usually say. If people really have a strong craving to attain enlightenment, this is going to be an obstacle. It's a good craving in a way, but craving to practice and have a strong craving to achieve so on and all these things. But it will get in the way because it's craving. It's a good craving and craving that possibly leads out of towards the ending of craving. But of course, it's often driven by a very strong sense of self. That's unfortunate, and so it's not so skillful because these are processes, the stages of enlightenment. It's best not to think. I was thinking today. It's best not to think of it as sotapanna, a stream enterer, a once returner, a non-returner, an arahant. It always sounds like a person, but it's actually a process that's happening. Sotapatti has happened, and you've entered the stream, you've seen. So it's reached actually. Sotapatti, you've reached the stream. So the second thing, so a person has seen impermanence, and so what does that have? The effect, the next thing they focus on, the mind will tend to turn away from the five sense world. It will turn away from its interest in those things. Because see, it's deeply impermanent. It's not going to last, and the attraction to the five sense world will start to fade. Viraga will start to reduce. This craving will start to fade. And then the next thing that will occur for that person, be contemplating cessation, nirodha, what we're talking about today. And that will be, seeing the ceasing of craving and the arising of more and more peace and happiness. Craving is a great disturber of our happiness and peace. We can't be content here and now. We've got to wait until we get whatever. Well, we may not get it. And then the last one is pati nissaga. And this, of course, is that letting go of ownership. This is the ownership of craving, ownership of a sense of I and me and mine. So this is the last four aspects of the Anapanasati Sutta. Person has come out of jhana, they're contemplating their experience, and they're not going through the textbook thinking, anicca, they're not thinking viraga, they're not thinking nirodha and pati nissaga. They're experiencing this. They just think, wow, there's so much gone. And they're noticing that these negative the qualities of craving, of desire, fading away. Because once the impermanence is seen, they're really shopping before they're finished. They haven't got much. This is where you get the experience, the people get the experience of nibbida, the turning away. And they see the impermanence of things. That attraction, the spell of the five senses, spell of the desires is broken. And so that starts to fade away, viraga. And then it can cease, nirodha. And then we can give it up. We can relinquish it. This is pati nissaga. Relinquish the craving, relinquish this sense of owning this craving, being the owner, being a permanent I, me, myself. So that's the vidarshana that happens naturally. It won't happen. It's not something, now you've finished. It's not like a checklist. Well, now I've done that. I'll go on to vidarshana now. not like that. It'll happen very naturally, because if you've had a very strong experience, and Ajahn Brahm, he describes it as a positive trauma. Most trauma is negative, but a positive trauma. So, just like, and now that's the first question. The second question, just briefly, what exactly is Sila Bhatta Paramasa? If you do something without losing faith in Buddha Dhamma, could that action be considered as not Sila Bhatta Paramasa? This is a bit unclear. An example is that you seek medical advice when you are sick. Some people go after divine help, but they have not lost faith in Buddha and Dhamma. So that's obviously, referring to people who may go to Devalayas, to Deva shrines, we call them, these and ask for favours for whatever, to get this and that, and to be free of sickness or whatever it be. So is that Sila Bhatta Paramasa? My understanding of Sila Bhatta Paramasa is that it's the belief that these activities, Sila is of course, morality, isn't it? And also the Vata, we call it Sila Bhatta, but changes from Vata, are sort of observances that we do. But they are with the thought, if I do this, I'll become enlightened. And of course that is what the second fetter is to becoming a stream enterer. It's an obstruction. Believing this is the way to enlightenment by just keeping Sila, or some special observance, practicing some special practice. There's lots of them. You see them on the internet. Many people have got all these shortcuts. They're usually ketiparas. Ketiparas are renowned for taking you out of the way places and taking much, much longer. And very nicely Ajahn Brahm said, the ketipara, the shortcut, is the Noble Eightfold Path. That's it. So that's Sila Bhatta Paramasa. Only if you think it's actually going to be a cause for enlightenment, awakening. You've got to go. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you for coming.
We had planned something else before.
Yeah. No problem. So lovely. Yeah. So
Please excuse us.
yeah. Wait a minute. Should we finish the dedication of merit? I think because it's for your father too today. Dedication of merit. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that just quickly. And the dedication of merit is for, of course, for your wife who's passed away, Mrs. Damdara Uyana Singhe Jayawardana Punchiheva. That's the full name. And this is this year. This is the third death anniversary. No, fourth, isn't it?
2019.
Yeah, before this year.
Yeah, for this coming.
Yeah, June, wasn't it? June. And also for
Father's 23rd.
23rd. And what was your father's name? He's on the wall here at this
It's there in the...
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I haven't got... it's just got here Kumar and Ruan's Punchiheva's parents and grandparents. I didn't copy down that one. And there's a few other people here. Mrs. Cornelia Benita, Jayasuriya de Silva.
The beginning, father's name is there.
Yeah. Let's have a look. See if it's... here it is. Oh no, maybe. Let's see if it comes. That's right. Gadiye Punchihewage Jivananda Silva, who was born 7th of March 1910 and then passed away 29th of January 2000. So this year is 23rd death anniversary. So wonderful to do it today, to remember him. Our parents are very important. Otherwise we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. So to have gratitude to them about what they passed away in 2000, 29th of January. This is Ruan and Kumar's dad. So very good to remember. Oh no, that's not it. So very good. That's I've lost my place. That's a lot. So we can just dedicate the merit to those people. Let's go. Oh. So great that you remember them, and especially today, the exact day. So that's So we can join in with it too. Etavata Jamhe Samvadam Punya Samvadam Samve Deva Anumodantu Samva Sampati Siddhya Etavata Jamhe Samvadam Punya Samvadam Samve Bhuta Anumodantu Samva Sampati Siddhya Etavata Jamhe Samvadam Punya Samvadam Samve Satta Anumodantu Samva Sampati Siddhya Akasata Chabumata Devanaga Mahindika Punyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Sasanam Akasata Chabumata Devanaga Mahindika Punyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Desanam Akasata Chabumata Devanaga Mahindika Punyantam Anumoditva Chiram Rakantu Man Paranti Idam Venyatinam Hotu Sukhita Hontu Jnatayo Idam Venyatinam Hotu Sukhita Hontu Jnatayo Idam Venyatinam Hotu Sukhita Hontu Jnatayo. Just a little blessing. Abhivandana Silisa Nicham Buddha Pachayino Chattaro Dhamma Vadanti Ayurvano Sukham Balam Ayurarodhya Sampatti Sangha Sampatti Mevacha Ato Nibbana Sampatti Iminate Samijatu. May you abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may you maintain well-being in yourselves. May everyone abide in well-being, in freedom from affliction, in freedom from hostility, in freedom from ill will, in freedom from anxiety, and may they maintain well-being in themselves. Sadhu, 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 sadhu. So, very good, very good, wonderful. That's great. You made merit and dedicated it to your father and to Dhammi too. That's nice. Sikyo to Sopakreva Nivodhireva. Okay, good. Yes, quite right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for setting up.
I do not wish to keep you waiting. Whilst thanking Venerable Bhikkhu Nissarano immensely for taking his valuable time off his busy schedule to deliver this Dhamma talk, we wish him good health for many more years to come. Venerable Sir, thank you very much. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you always. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.